Hi everyone, Dr. Funke Brown here. So today I'd like to speak about 6 things every parent should know about melatonin. I get a lot of questions from friends, from patients about melatonin and when should it be used and how much should they get, and I'm hoping that this video will cover some of those questions. So, the first thing I would like you to know about melatonin is that it is a hormone. Melatonin is a hormone that our bodies produce. It's a natural hormone produced by a structure in our brain called the pineal gland. That's really in the center of the brain. And we call it the darkness hormone because what happens is that when it gets dark, a part of our brain gets stimulated to produce that hormone. And once that hormone is produced, it helps to make us drowsy. So that's the first thing. It's a natural hormone that our bodies produce. The second thing I would say is melatonin, which is exogenous melatonin that most people tend to ask me about, is a substance that is marketed as a herbal supplement. It is not FDA regulated, and so there's a lot of variability. And this can be bought over the counter in pretty much any store. The reason that it's important to note that it's not FDA regulated is that the dose and the response in individuals vary. And also, there was actually a study that was done a few years ago that looked at 31 different preparations of melatonin. And what they observed was that within those preparations, there was variability of anywhere from about minus 83% to about 478% in the dose of the melatonin that was being marketed. In fact, some other studies have looked at just one container of melatonin in and of itself. Within the pills, there's a wide difference. There's varying ranges of the actual melatonin concentration that's present in there. So again, it's available over the counter as a herbal supplement. It's not FDA regulated. And that's really important to note. And that's why if you're going to use melatonin, that you use it under the guidance of a doctor, just to make sure that you're not giving medication that potentially could cause harm to you or to your child. Now, number 3, I would categorize the functions of melatonin. Exogenous, again, is melatonin that we take, as 2 main categories. One is that it can be used as what you call a chronobiotic, and then the second is that it can be used as a hypnotic. When you talk about its use as a chronobiotic, what that literally means is that it is used to shift your circadian clock. And so it is often used in this form for treatment of some conditions called delayed sleep-wake phase syndrome, as well as things like jet lag, as well as shift disorders. And what happens in, for example, delayed sleep-wake phase, we can see it in teenagers as well as in adults, is that they have a significant delay in their circadian clock. And so their melatonin production does not occur until later. And so that's something you might notice with your teenagers, even just a physiologic change that occurs after puberty, where all of a sudden, if they previously would go to bed at about 8 p.m., now they're not able to fall asleep because there's been a natural shift. But in delayed sleep-wake phase syndrome, there's a whole much longer delay such that they're not able to fall asleep for several hours into the night, sometimes as late as 2 a.m. And it's all well and good. They fall asleep, they're able to stay asleep. But then the problem is that they then are not able to wake up until very late during the day, like 12 noon or so, which would be fine, except that they still have school and they still have work and things like that. So, a delayed sleep phase syndrome, essentially, when you give melatonin, usually at a very, very low dose, anywhere from zero point 0.1 to zero point 0.5 milligrams. You give it several hours, like 4 to 5 hours before the desired bedtime to just really sort of advance that delayed day. So it sort of advances the phase so that these children can fall asleep a bit sooner. So that's the chronobiotic role. The other role is as a hypnotic, and that's really where we tend to use it to treat conditions like insomnia in children. Again, not really the gold standard because the only group of children that it's been well studied has been in children with neurodevelopmental conditions, which will be my next point. And essentially, as a hypnotic, you're given larger doses really at about bedtime, about 30 to 60 minutes before bedtime. And so, what that does is it promotes drowsiness and helps children fall asleep. And this, again, you're using larger doses, anywhere from 1 to 6 milligrams. Usually over 6 milligrams, I don't tend to see as much of an effect. And so you might see people using 10 milligrams, 20 milligrams, and things like that. But I often don't see as much effect on a higher dose than 6 milligrams. Again, either you're using it as a chronobiotic or a hypnotic, you should be using that under the guidance of your doctor. The reason why is if you give the melatonin at the wrong time, you may potentially be worsening your child's sleep. So that's really important to note. Then the fourth thing I would say is that melatonin is being used more in or studied more in children with neurodevelopmental conditions. And so such conditions include things like autism or ADHD. This is really where it's been well studied. Again, sleep research is at its infancy and pediatric sleep research even more so. And so a lot of information we have is very limited, but in these groups, we've seen it used and it's been shown to be effective and it's been shown to be relatively safe, actually. Even studies on children who are using it for up to 2 years, it seems to still be safe in them. And then the fifth point I would say is that melatonin should not be given in isolation. It should be used in combination with other strategies to help insomnia. So most often behavioral intervention for insomnia has been shown to be effective and has been shown to be sustainable. So if you're going to give melatonin, you shouldn't just give it and walk away. An example of behavioral strategies is things like healthy sleep habits, things like making sure that the child is not exposed to too much bright light. That is important to note because melatonin, like I mentioned, is a hormone of darkness. And so if you give it and there's a lot of bright lights, there's devices on, the child has their iPad in bed, it's not really going to work. Or if you have a child who's running around the house and really just like eating, drinking, playing, and you just give melatonin, that's not necessarily an environment that will promote sleep. So that may not be as effective. So you want to use it and also have healthy sleep habits in place and making sure they have a consistent bedtime routine and things like that in order for it to work. Then the sixth point I would say is melatonin can help with falling asleep, but doesn't typically help you stay asleep. And so that's something that we have to be aware of. The only time when you can use it for sleep maintenance, which is staying asleep, is if you have the extended release preparations. And that really typically comes just in pill form. So, in order to, if you notice that the main problem you're having or your child is having is with staying asleep, then you really have to look into other things, other strategies to help with that. Speak with your physician. Is there an underlying medical condition? Is there something else that's going on that we need to address that melatonin in and of itself is not able to fix? So that's it. Those are the 5 points that I feel that every parent should know as you consider should your child be on melatonin or not. Number one, again, melatonin is a hormone. It's the darkness hormone, so it's kind of sensitive to light and it's produced at night and helps us to feel sleepy. Number two, it's not FDA regulated, and as a result, there's such a variability in the concentration that you're getting even in one pill bottle. Number three is that it can function both as a chronobiotic, where you're giving lower doses several hours before bedtime, or as a hypnotic, where you're giving it closer to bedtime to treat insomnia related to sleep onset. Number four is that it's been well studied really in children with autism and ADHD, as well as children that have blindness, and so they're really not able to perceive when it's light or dark. And then number five is that it absolutely needs to be used with behavioral interventions for insomnia and should be used under the guidance of your child's doctor. And then the sixth one is that it is used to help you fall asleep, but typically doesn't work as well to help you stay asleep. So, really, depending on when the problem with sleep is occurring, that can help you decide or help you know what to expect when you use melatonin. And so, I hope this has been helpful. And I would love it if you like my video and if you subscribe to my channel. That once I have new content, you'll be the first to know. Additionally, if you could share it with those in your circle that you feel that would benefit from this information, that would be awesome. And so that's it. I'll see you next time. Bye.